Hi everyone, and welcome to the show. Today I will briefly describe the standard processes of modern agriculture, explain the main problems with it, and how regenerative agriculture can provide a solution. Regenerative agriculture is a holistic approach to farming that does not focus on just one aspect like crops or animals or dairy, but rather puts all these pieces together to turn the farm into a small ecosystem that flourishes because it lets nature do most of the work. In traditional agriculture, the farmer starts the season by tilling the land. This allows them to put the seeds deep in the dirt and helps kill weeds and other pests that would harm the crops. Next, the farmer adds fertilizers and nutrients to help the crops grow and herbicides and pesticides to kill harmful bugs. In the fall, the crops are harvested and the fields lie empty until it is time to plant again in the spring. Animals are usually raised on different farms and by different farmers from the ones who grow crops. Typically, the animals are kept in tight quarters like a barn, small pasture, or feedlot, where they are fed hay. Unfortunately, while methods like these have been used successfully by farmers for hundreds of years, modern science is revealing more and more the types of problems that this approach can cause. First, tillage releases nitrogen, carbon, and other nutrients which make the soil more fertile into the atmosphere as gases, where they can be problematic. Also, many beneficial organisms like earthworms and fungi lose their homes or are killed, furthering the decline of the soil. Next, when the farmer only plants one crop in a field at a time, you do not have a very diverse ecosystem. The field lacks a sufficient range of insect species to keep one from growing out of control, and there are no plant varieties to provide nutrients to the soil. To compensate, fertilizers and pesticides are added. Unfortunately, these chemicals are frequently overused, so that excess remains in the ground after harvest. Since these chemicals are mostly inorganic in nature, they cannot be naturally processed and eventually leach through the ground into the water supply. After harvest, letting the field lay empty leaves it vulnerable to wind and soil erosion, and the lack of growth means there are no root systems to maintain the soil. In the end, the soil loses its fertility over time to the point where it becomes little more than something to hold the plants upright. Without root systems, bacteria and other insects, it cannot provide enough nutrients to new plants, and it cannot retain water or carbon. The long-term effects are many and varied, but include things like the Dust Bowl in the 20th century, where tons of dead topsoil gets blown away by the wind, a general warming of the planet, and increased flooding due to the inability of soil to retain much water. Feeding animals grain rather than letting them graze on open pastures makes them less healthy because their digestive systems are not designed for corn and soy. As a result, they become much more susceptible to E. coli and other diseases and almost always need antibiotics, which in turn helps create more antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria. It is no surprise then that the meat produced through these methods is of lower nutritional quality. For example, it is high in omega-6 fatty acids, low in omega-3s, and is much lower in B vitamins, vitamins K, E, and trace minerals. So how does regenerative agriculture address these issues? First, no-till methods leave the soil much more intact and prevent root system degradation and removal of bacteria and insect life. However, a no-till approach alone is insufficient as it does not actively cultivate and nourish the soil. In fact, farmers who use a no-till approach but still plant monocultures have to use even more herbicides because of the increased weed growth that the tilling would otherwise combat. Further, if they don't plant cover crops, they are even more subject to soil erosion because tilling helps even out water gullies that develop over time. Planting a diverse set of crops that complement each other allows an ecosystem to develop. It attracts a diverse array of insects and bugs that keep each other in check and allow the plants to flourish, and it allows deep root systems to develop that nourish the soil. In other words, nature is allowed to behave normally and the crops thrive. Planting cover crops after harvest keeps root systems in the ground, which maintains soil health and help prevent erosion. When animals graze on the land in the off-season, they eat some grass, trample some grass into the dirt, and poop all over the field. When they graze, the deeper parts of the plant root systems break off and provide more nutrients to the soil. As long as the field can rest long enough between grazings, it has time to regrow deep root systems, and a self-sustaining cycle is created. The trampled grass provides a natural mulch that prevents excess weeds from growing, and the poop is trampled into the soil, where it can further nourish the soil. Pasture animals are rotated frequently through different fields throughout the year so that any particular field is not overgrazed. Thus, the fields are less subject to erosion and are able to hold much more carbon and nitrogen. Further, the cows have much more space to themselves and a healthier diet, so they are not constantly sick. Thus, they rarely require antibiotics. On the whole, they live a life closer to how they would in the wild. Ultimately, regenerative agriculture is about creating the conditions that allow nature to work best. This nourishes the soil, improves animal health, and improves the environment.